Call the meeting to order. It's a meeting of March 18th. We'll note that all the commissioners are here and the city administrator is not.
He's on his way.
He's late. First item of business is the order of business. Are there any changes to the order of business? Hearing none, would there be a motion to approve the order of business?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion, the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The motion carries. I'm going to call on Mr. Kessel to make an introduction.
Thank you, President Johnson and Commission. What I'd like to do tonight is introduce you to our new city engineer. I have the privilege of actually introducing you to Mr. Bill Watson, sitting over there by Mr. Corton. Mr. Watson started a week ago today with the city of Dickinson. He comes to us from Alamogordo, New Mexico. And if you can say that the first time as well as I did, I'll be very impressed, because it took me a while to do that. So Mr. Watson has a long history in city engineer work. He was obviously our top candidate for the position, and we're excited to have him with us. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Watson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm here with my lovely wife, Kimmy, and we are so pleased to be here in this cold weather. It's a little bit colder than we're used to, but I'm very much looking forward to working with you all to improve the conditions in the area, and I'm sure that we can improve the working relationships with the developers and the consulting engineers in the group. And as I said, I'm very much looking forward to working with you all to make a better city. Thank you.
Well, welcome, Mr. Watson. Can you just, for our public, just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got, I guess, from the cradle to Dickinson? Briefly.
Well, I don't know how briefly I can make it, but I'll try. I'm a native of Scottsbluff, Nebraska, which is about 400 miles due south of here, as you all probably know. I'm a registered civil engineer and a registered electrical engineer. I'm a professional traffic operations engineer. I'm a graduate of the University of Nebraska. I've worked about 20 years in the private side with two very large transportation engineering firms, and about 20 years, a little bit less than 20 years, in the public side as both a transportation engineer, a civil engineer, a public works director, a city engineer. So I've been familiar with the public side as well as the city side, or the private side. And I've worked for organizations, public organizations like the Clark County, Nevada, which is basically Las Vegas, the state of Nebraska, Kimball County, Nebraska. I don't know, you might know where Kimball is. And on the private side, I worked for Louis Berger Group, who was the 7th largest transportation engineering firm in the world. While I was with them, I traveled extensively in the Far East, doing engineering projects in Thailand and China and Vietnam, as well as doing domestic projects in Las Vegas and Phoenix and Dallas and some of the other larger cities in the western part of the U.S. So I've been around the West a little bit, and actually around the country a little bit during my engineering career. And I came here from Alamogordo, New Mexico, where the weather is much nicer today than it is here in Dickinson. But as I said, I'm looking very much forward to making a home here and working with you all to improve conditions.
Well, welcome. We're pleased that you're here. Are there any comments or questions by our commissioners?
I'd just like to tell you, you'll get used to the weather. You just dress up here, where down there you undress. Take the layers off, we put them on.
The weather, as much as it was in Scottsbluff when I was growing up, but that's been some time ago. so I'm trying to reacclimate.
It wasn't bad today. Sun was out.
I saw that.
Yeah, yeah. I heard that, Mr. Kessel. Okay, we'll move on then to item number 2, the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson? Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We'll move to the non-timetable agenda, and the first item we have there is to hear the financial report. So, Mrs. Johnson.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. I would like to highlight a few items from our financial report through February. We'll begin with our general fund report. With 17% of our year completed, our property taxes equal $2.1 million, and we're 62% collected compared to budget. Our other taxes and fees, which include financial institution tax and franchise fees, are collected quarterly. Our intergovernmentals include revenues we receive from state and local governments, such as highway distribution tax and oil production tax. Our total revenue is $246,000 and is 6% collected compared to budget. Our state aid distributions don't begin until March. Our licenses, fees, and services includes building permit revenues and oil royalties and is 13% collected compared to budget. Our building permit revenue is up $31,000 over last year. This category also includes our municipal court fines, which are running equal to last year. Our total general fund revenues equal $3.1 million through February, and we're 23% collected compared to budget. Our general fund expenses are broken down into groups that include general government, which includes our administration, court, finance, and buildings and grounds, and is 18% expended compared to budget. This overage is due mostly to timing. Our public safety, which includes police and fire, is 12% expended compared to budget. Our engineering and streets, which now includes community development, is 19% expended compared to budget, and this overage is due to budgeted equipment purchases in our street department. Our cultural services, which includes museum and forestry, is 11% expended compared to budget. Our total general fund expenses equal $1.8 million through February, and we're 13% expended compared to budget. In our enterprise funds, our water and wastewater revenues equal $1.2 million through February, and we're 17% collected compared to budget, and 32% more than last year. Our expenses and capital outlays total $1.1 million, which is 16% expended compared to budget. In our solid waste fund, our revenue is $615,000 through February, which is 16% collected compared to budget, and 17% more than last year. And our expenses and capital outlays total $344,000, which is 9% expended compared to budget. In our sales tax reports, in our 1% sales tax fund, we received $1.1 million of revenue through February, which is down 5% for the year. Our 1% sales tax fund is broken down into 3 groups. The first is the 50% share, which is for street projects and infrastructure. In 2013, we are budgeting infrastructure projects totaling $850,000, but no direct transfer to our street projects fund as we've had in the past. Our second is the 20% share, which is for job creation and senior programs. This segment funds Stark Development, Elder Care, and RSVP, along with the Senior Citizen and Southwest Regional Grant programs. The expenses through February total $123,000. Our third segment is the 30% share, which is set aside for capital improvements. The items budgeted here include a portion of the final BAC pledge payment, the animal shelter, trails construction, and parks and rec improvements. In our 0.5% sales tax, we've received $552,000 of revenue through February, which is also down 5% for the year. Just as a reminder, our sales tax collections are very volatile through the first few months of the year, and the early decreases here are not always an indication of the future trend. In our hospitality tax, we received $155,000 of revenue through February, which is down 9% over last year. Our expenses include the $50,000 subsidy for the Stark County Veterans Memorial. In our occupancy tax, our revenues total $83,000 through February, which is down 29% over last year. Our expenses include $54,000 paid to the CVB for their subsidy. In our street projects report, we received $23,000 in revenues, and we expended $195,000 toward those projects through February. And our development impact fee program shows the projects that have been approved and the projects that have been assessed. This program has a balance of $34,000 at the end of February. Those are some of the highlights of the financial statements. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mrs. Johnson, do you see anything on the revenue side or the expense side after the first 2 months that concerns you kind of regarding our original budget numbers?
On the revenue side, there isn't anything so far that's lagging. As I mentioned, some of them only start in March because of the accruals that we have to do back, but nothing is showing behind. Our expenses we're showing actually below budget right now. A lot of those are payroll related. We did have several positions approved for 2013. Most of those are not filled yet.
Okay. And on the sales tax side, are you optimistic that we'll get to break even here by March or April? Or?
I am. I went back and checked, and in the last 5 years, I believe it was 2 years, we actually started in larger negative numbers than these in the first couple months and did end up with positives. So it usually ends up to be timing more than anything, depending on when the state gets their collection.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Mrs. Johnson or comments?
Mr. President, just a note here. The hospitality tax, I think that is something that's going to be interesting to look at here as we go on in the future. I don't know what our occupancy rate is here in Dickinson, but you hear Minot, you hear numbers like 50, 54%, that type of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how that keeps on.
Mr. Altman's, are you still kind of active with the CVB?
Sure.
What do you hear about occupancy rates?
I think they're stabilizing. You know, you're seeing some of the occupancy rates go down, but the revenues have not fallen as dramatically as the occupancy rate because there's just more hotels to spread people out through. I think moving forward, I was just talking to Ed before the meeting. You know, historically Dickinson's had a 70% single-family house, 30% multifamily mix. We're still staying with that mix as we approve projects and move forward. My concern would be if we were more like Williston, where it's the opposite mix. Then you have a whole town that's for rent. And so if we can keep our single-family housing in pace with our multifamily, I think that we can stabilize the hotel side of it too. I think where you run into a problem is when you overbuild the R3 and overbuild the hotel, then that's a recipe for disaster. But so far with our comprehensive plan, our 2035, I think we're still on target.
Thank you, Mr. Altman. Any other comments or questions? Would there be a motion to accept or approve the financial report?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Not, we'll vote. Ms. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. That brings us to item B, which would be the second reading for the Dickinson 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Mr. Catan, would you like to introduce this item?
Mr. President, Commissioners, I will defer that to Bob Shannon, who's in the audience, project manager. I'll give him the glory to present the second reading of that, and I'll be available for any comments.
Okay, well, welcome, Mr. Shannon. Mr. Shannon, again, is with KLJ, so thank you for being here.
Thank you, President Johnson, Commissioners. At the last reading, we did receive some comments, and we do have a handout, I believe was in your agenda, that references those revisions that were made. If you like, I can summarize those for you and the public. First off, the previous version referenced a supermajority would be required to make amendments to the plan, and that was changed to just a mere majority, so that you have more flexibility in that. We have updated the urban service area boundary map to include the new developments on the west near the interstate. And we also updated it to indicate that Dickinson was the 4th fastest growing metropolitan city in 2011, but that has since changed in the last week. We're now the 3rd fastest in 2012, so we will update the final report one last time there. And if you have any other revisions, please, this would be the time to bring those forward. We've also made reference to the proposed MDU diesel topping plant and the impact that could have on the community as far as 100 permanent jobs. We've updated the action out at the airport that before we had that there was a possibility of adding a 50 passenger regional jet service, and now we know that Delta Airlines and United will both begin 50 passenger regional jet service in June of this year. So that's been reflected in the report. Regarding city downtown streetscape improvements, we've revised it to say the city should consider looking at funding opportunities and funding some streetscape projects, looking for grants. On page 117, we've noted that the city has officially established the correct figure number for the urban service boundary. And on page 165, rather than referencing that the city water model shall include future updates, we say it should establish and be presented on a future water system map, and the water model is recommended to be updated periodically rather than yearly and lock in a particular schedule. Regarding additional water storage, we did make a reference that the city currently does not treat your own water, and that you should work closely with the Southwest Water Authority to determine responsibilities for coordination, planning, design, and construction of additional water treatment capacity. It's also recommended that water options be monitored, and any changes should be reflected in the 2035 water system. Then up on page 242, we updated the statistics on the fire department incidences to include 2012, which there were now 399 total incidents, and that represents an increase of 40% since 2011, 66% since 2010, and 83% since 2009. And the detailed information about the incidents in 2011 is shown in Table 8.5. On page 245, we've added another strategy to increase the number of full-time firefighters to reduce reliance on volunteers and to enhance the response time. On page 245, we've added that this level of regarding a minimum level of service, we added that this level of service should be realistic once a new fire substation is established at the planned public safety center and additional full-time firefighters are hired. On page 252, we've updated the discussion about the public library, noting that the operating and usage statistics for the Dickinson Area Public Library and comparably sized libraries are shown in a table With Dickinson's population projected to double between 2013 and 2021, which will put an increased stress on the library services or resources. And you can see that the other communities we compared to are Williston, Minot, and the Morton Mandan Public Library. We've also recommended that an ideal option would be to immediately increase budgetary resources. But the Dickinson Area Public Library is already operating at maximum capacity given the current staff and funding levels. And an immediate increase in resources would ensure the library is able to continue providing a high level of service to area residents. The Minot Library, which has 133,000 visits in 2011, may provide a guidance for increasing operating resources. At a minimum, the Dickinson Area Public Library should match the operating hours of the Minot Public Library and increase staff levels as appropriate. If you look at Table 8.9, the Minot Library operates 7 days a week at 68 hours during non-summer, and during the summer, 6 days a week at 64 hours, where Dickinson is operating 61 hours for 6 days in the summer. And the Morton Mandan Public Library operates 7 days, but for only 65 hours, so they're getting that additional day of service with only 4 more hours of operation over what Dickinson operates now. So year-round, a 7-day operation is becoming a popular trend with public libraries, and it's desired by patrons of the Dickinson Area Public Library. The library should should gradually add hours and staff as population continues to increase, eventually reaching annual operation of at least 68 hours per week. A phased implementation plan may be a cost-effective way to achieve this goal of year-round 7-day operation if additional resources are not immediately available. The change noting that converting that to 65 hours a week would only create a small increase in total operating hours. On page 254, rather than the city shall consider establishing adequate public facilities policies, it's changed to should. And the city may need to formally establish a minimum level of service for police and fire, rather than the city will. And we've added that financial contributions from developers would only apply to capital projects. Personnel costs would not be included. And finally, on page 260, it's referenced that the city of Dickinson has historically provided a $20,000 subsidy for the symposium. That's the Theodore Roosevelt Center. Are there any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Any comments here? Ed, anything you'd like to add?
Mr. President, the reference to the library was after the meeting. The library director wanted some clarification for that language. So what Bob was referring to tonight was since the meeting, but it was clarification in the text as part of the city services for the library. So I just wanted to explain that to you. Other than that, the city is very happy with the comp plan, with the end product. It's been a year and a half. It's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I think the community should be very proud of what we have. It's definitely a community-based plan, and recommend second reading and approval of our comp plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Curtin. Mr. Shannon, if you would stay available for comments or questions, we'll ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to comment on the plan or address questions to you or others here. But so if there's anybody from the public that would like to comment on the Dickinson Comprehensive Plan, this is the second reading of the ordinance. You may do so now. Just step to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments or questions. There's no one then from the public that wishes to comment. Would there be any other comments or questions by city commissioners or other city staff?
I'll make a motion to approve second reading and final passage of ordinance number 1500.
We have the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Shannon, and express our appreciation to your associates at KLJ for all the work they did. As Mr. Catan said, I think it was a very valuable process for us to go through, and I'm confident we have a plan that we will do our utmost to execute, and it will not be a plan that just sits on the shelf and gathers dust. So thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to thank the citizens and commission and everybody that helped make this plan fit Dickinson. It was great to see the amount of public participation that we had. People really cared about their community and the direction in the future. So that's very reassuring to us.
Well, and, you know, and as we discussed briefly before the meeting, as draft sections of the plan became available, we started to use them right away in our planning and our discussion. So it isn't as if, you know, nothing has happened till today. This has been, again, a valuable process to go through. It started guiding us several months ago in our decision making. So it's, again, a good process.
Thanks again.
Okay, we have item C. Yeah, our city assessor has a request to make.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. We're getting close to that Board of Equalization time, which is usually the second Tuesday in April. Due to all the work that we're undergoing, we are again asking to move that back about a month to give us a little more time to finish our work. The past 2 years, I think it's taken right at about an hour and a half to complete the Board of Equalization meeting itself, which would allow us to run it ahead of the regularly scheduled meeting with the 3 o'clock start. Or if we want to put it on a different day, you know, we're open and available for that as well. So just bring that to your attention, and if you could find a date in May that works great for you, I would sure appreciate changing that and helping us out. So,
Mr. Hirschfeld, why don't you guys lobby the legislature to get this date changed? I think every year that I've been mayor, we move it back a month, and I would guess other cities are doing the same thing.
I would support that.
Yeah. Okay, well, he's requested a 3 o'clock start on May 6th. I know I've looked at my calendar. It works for me. Does it work for fellow commissioners here?
Works for me.
We're good? Okay, so I suppose, Mr. Colling, we need a official motion to reschedule?
Yes, Mr. President, you would need a motion.
Would someone care to move a motion rescheduling this to May 6th at 3 p.m.?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. It's 5 o'clock. We have a timetable at 5 o'clock. It's to hear a presentation from the Sunrise Youth Center. Mr. Mayor, Jerry Mayer, is here to make that presentation. Mr. Kessel, anything that you'd like to add?
President, Commissioner, I'd just like to add that Mr. Mayor, organization Sunrise Youth Bureau is one that does receive funds from the City of Dickinson in our subsidy grant, and we like to get an annual report from them when they're available. And so Mr. Mayor is here to provide that report to us this evening.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. My name again is Jerry Mayer, Director of the Sunrise Youth Bureau, and I did do a 2012 annual report. I don't know if everybody got a copy of that, but I did bring some extra ones if anybody didn't get one. I have some available here. So basically, I want to tell you that the Sunrise Youth Bureau continues to provide quality of life services to the citizens of our community and our youth and our families. We've been around since 1999. And we are continuing to do what we can to make sure that the quality of life that is in Dickinson and our surrounding communities remains the same for our families. Basically, I'll just cover a few highlights of our program, what we do. Basically, we cover the areas of diversion, which is keeping the youth from going through the juvenile court system. Basically, we cover education and prevention programs to the youth, and out-of-school suspension program, and we house youth that are in need of house for a short period of time. So we do have a housing facility there also. Our 2012 income was a little over $220,000, and just so you know that of that $220,000, 56 of it came from the surrounding counties and the city of Dickinson. So 56% of our income comes from donations, either through mill levies that the counties have given us or through donations of some type. The rest of our funding comes from different things like class fees, juvenile court case reimbursement, and those kinds of things. Our expenditures last year came to about $210,000, so our budget is really tight. We work with what we have, and we have what we have is available. Our education program is done through our youth educator. She conducts classes throughout the surrounding communities, and just so you know, we do cover all of southwest North Dakota to include Williams County, McKenzie County, and Mercer County also. Our education programs, our youth educator, as I was talking about, she does classes out in the community, and the purpose we do these classes to is she actually does them in the school setting, and she did 189 classes, and she taught 3,677 youth on subjects such as bullying, teasing, harassment, school issues, respect rules, those kinds of things that are dealt with in the school. It's very important that we continue to educate our young people on these programs, because the more we can educate them, the more we can teach them about how to deal with life and daily situations, the better they'll be able to handle things that happen in the school. We cannot afford to have a tragedy happen because we weren't providing the proper education to our youth. And we are the only service in southwest North Dakota that provides this service. Our attendant care program is the housing of our youth. We house youth that the police pick up. We work very close with law enforcement. They bring in youth any hour of the day, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday. These are youth that are either run away from home, youth that the parents no longer control. These are sometimes unruly children. The purpose of the housing is to provide them a safe place where they can stay until we can figure out what to do with them, basically, whether that be return them home or whether that will keep them there until we can find a place for them outside the home. They stay at the Youth Bureau anywhere from a few hours to several weeks, depending on how long it finds to place them. It's our most, I don't want to say popular program because that's not a good word, but it's our most used program. We do have a policy that when the police contact me and say, hey, I have a youth that comes over there, that we find placement for them within 15 minutes so that the police can get back on the street, do their jobs, and not worry and have to monitor these youth. Last year we did about, I'm trying to think here, 70-some youth, 75 youth stay at the Youth Bureau, and the cost to us keeping them there was a little almost $71,000 is what it cost to house them at the Youth Bureau. So that was a very expensive program for us. Our diversion program is a program where we work with juvenile court, local law enforcement, other agencies, where we receive cases from, I would say cases or conduct from youth that are being either unruly, possession of drugs. You can see on the back if you have the report, curfew violations, truancy, shoplifters, tobacco, criminal trespassing, these kind of violations of the law. And the purpose of the diversion program is to keep them from going to juvenile court. Obviously, we have statistics that can show you that the longer we can keep a youth out of the juvenile justice system, the less apt they are to commit a delinquent crime later on in life. So the more we can handle them when they're younger, the less chances are that we'll have to deal with them through the court system, which obviously saves money by not having them to go through the court system. So most of our cases come from Stark County. Obviously, most of them come from within the city of Dickinson. Most of our clients are from this area. A program that we started not too long ago was an out-of-school suspension program. This is for youth that are kicked out of school or expelled or suspended for whatever reason. What we do is, rather than have them go home, play video games, go to the mall, we require that they spend their suspension time at the Youth Bureau. So when they're suspended from school, they now come to the Youth Bureau, they serve their suspension time there, we get them caught up on their homework, we make them take classes on what got them suspended, and it actually keeps them up to date on their grades, and it doesn't have them fall behind on their schoolwork. So actually, the out-of-school suspension, again, saves money by not having them get behind, fall behind on their classes, etc. So we keep them there the whole time that they are suspended. And that could be anywhere from a couple hours to a couple days, depending on how long they're suspended from school. All of these programs that I talked about are there for one reason, and that is to keep the youth and their families current, up to date, making sure that they have the skills necessary to succeed in life, because that's the biggest thing, is we want to make sure that these kids and families have the tools necessary to maintain their quality of life within the city or within our county. So again, a very short report, but I think you can see the gist of what we're trying to do over there. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions?
Jerry, what is your age group, basically? It's all under 18, right?
From 6 to 18.
6 to 18.
6 years old to 18.
Looks like Stark County has the biggest problems.
They have the most population. I won't say they have the biggest problems. They have the most population, so that's what we do. In fact, you know, just recent. Well, right now we have a 7-year-old over there that's been there with us for 9 days, and we're trying to find placement, and we just can't find a place for him. And he's been there for, like I said, 9 days, and I don't know how much longer he'll be there, but very tough in some cases to find placement.
When you're saying find a place, is that like a foster home?
Could be a foster home, could be home on the range, could be a group facility, could be you know, any place that we could find that somebody would be willing to take them. So we are hurting for foster care families in this region, in this area in general. So if any of you want to volunteer for that particular task, I'm sure that we can hook you up, because there's just a lot of them that we just don't have a lot of foster care families.
Mr. Mayor, if there is someone that's viewing this meeting and they're interested in becoming a foster care family, who do they contact?
A social service, Stark County Social Service, or other social service agency within their county.
But if it's here in Stark County,
Be
just
Stark
call
County Social Service.
Stark County Social.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for several years. Have you noticed any changes in, I guess, any changes in general since the oil impact has been present here in Dickinson?
What we're seeing is that a lot of the families we do see are directly related to the oil field in one way or another. Not that they've moved here directly, but maybe they've transferred a job into the oil field and they're now working in the oil field. So we're seeing a lot of those families where it's causing a lot of stress on their life because they're gone a lot, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, and the family is having a hard time coping. So not necessarily did they move here, but maybe they've gotten a job within the oil field, so we're seeing a lot of that. The biggest thing we're seeing, though, is the violations of the youth are changing. And what I mean by that is it used to be, when I first started this 10, 15 years ago, the biggest thing we had to worry about was drinking alcohol. And now we're not finding that anymore. We're finding very, very little alcohol problems, but more in the area of synthetic drugs, marijuana, those kinds of things that are happening. So we're finding out now that that's kind of shifting a little. The kids, or at least they're not getting picked up for alcohol, but I'm not saying they're still not drinking, but less of that and more of the drug issues. So that's a concern, because it's very, very hard to detect a synthetic drug in a person that, you know, we don't have a drug test that we can test for marijuana, we can test for a lot of these other drugs, meth and cocaine, but we can't test for synthetic drugs. It's just not a viable test out there for that. So we're finding a lot more of that.
But and it's getting like it's almost even, 48 male, 30 female, so it's...
There's no gender difference, really.
Right.
We haven't seen any really big gender difference, no. We work with a variety of agencies. Again, we work with law enforcement, we work with social services, we work with Badlands, we work with community action. So we work with a lot of agencies, so a lot of these agencies will probably say the same thing, that's kind of shifting away from, and I think law enforcement will even tell you it's shifting away from the alcohol problems that we used to have into something different now, which is a concern.
Alcohol problems we're giving to Chief Dossinger now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, one question. On your expenditures,
Mm-hmm.
you have attendant care there. Can you give me an example of what those expenditures are?
Those are mostly salaries, and what happens is when a youth is placed in the Youth Bureau, the North Dakota Association of Counties will reimburse us a certain dollar amount for how long the children are there. So they'll reimburse us up to 48 hours of salary and food and et cetera. And that's what that expenditure is for. That's a reimbursement.
Reimbursement from the state per student?
From the North Dakota Association of Counties, yeah, the state.
Okay.
Yeah, they reimburse us a certain amount depending on. So if a youth is placed there for Up to 48 hours, the Association of Counties will reimburse us for those 48. Anything after 48, we have to pick up the tab, basically.
Other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much for appearing. Good.
Okay, thank you.
We have a 510 item, and this has to do with rural development community facilities loan, and I think if I read my information properly, this is a request being made by Able. And Mr. Kessel, are you introducing this?
I can certainly introduce. You are entirely correct, Mayor. It is a request for support. Able is applying for a community facilities direct loan. As a portion of that loan process, they ask for a significant community support from the location in which the entity is applying for that loan. Able intends to acquire a building and expand their thrift store, and the loan proceeds would be used to do exactly that. There is no financial obligation on the part of the city. They just simply need a letter of support from us saying that we approve of the thrift store, its location, and of its purpose. So the location would be the former Classic Lanes on West Villard. They'll renovate a portion of that, not the whole building, but a portion of that building for the thrift store purposes. I'm not sure if there's an Able representative in the audience this evening, but certainly I would yield the floor to them to talk about the project in more detail.
No one's here from Able. Mr. Colling, if we want to provide community support here or city support, do you have a motion in mind that we would pass?
Mr. President, in your packets, there is a form, certification of significant community support, and it'd be my recommendation, if you decide to approve that your motion would be to approve that statement as provided in your packets.
Okay, that's the one that's labeled Guide 1, Attachment 1. Is that
I believe it's labeled certification of significant community support.
Oh, okay, I've got it. So would anyone care to move a motion containing that language?
I'll move that we adopt the certification language.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Oltmann?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. It's 5:15. We have a presentation by Dickinson Parks and Recs regarding the West River Community Center expansion. And Mr. Kramer, are you going to introduce this item?
I will. Thank you, Commissioners. Also with me tonight, Scott Karski and Lynn McChesney from the Expansion Committee, Mike LaFour and Howard Sharp of the Park Board, as well as Dan Mells and Greg Huber from Mortensen Construction. We'll jump right into the PowerPoint here. And obviously you guys are fully aware of a lot of the numbers that we think is driving the need as we continue to look at the expansion projects. First and foremost, the forecasted population trends show that in 2020 we'll be looking at somewhere in the 39,000 population area for the community of Dickinson. When you look at the age group that will see the largest percent growth, the 25 to 44, that is the single largest demographic age-wise that the Park District sees in our facility users as well as our program users. Not only in that age, but they typically are the age of the parents who have kids who participate in our programs and use our facilities also. So you can see the effect that this rise in population will have on not only our programs but our facilities. This will give you a quick overview of the growth that the West River Community Center has seen since we opened our doors in May of 2004. all of you remember that we hired a very well-known consultant to help us determine what we expected for memberships, and the number they came up with was 1,750, and we opened our doors with 4,170. As you can see, the 4-year growth trend is still continuing to climb, and through February of 2013, we were at 6,465. That number has stayed very consistent to about a 20% rate of the population. Again, going back from 2004 to current, we're tracking about 20% of the population are some sort of membership holders at the community center. And as far as overall usage, you'll see on the bottom there, we did surpass the 3 millionth user of the West River Community Center. As we get into the 3 projects that the community has been talking and discussing for well over a year, the outdoor pool, the gym and fitness expansion, as well as the recreation center expansion, you'll see the existing facility in this slide, and there was a lot of work and diligence put into the planning of the original building so that there would be a wow factor to the visual aspect of the facility. So you'll see as we get into some of the pictures of the new facilities, you're going to see that we're trying to tie in a lot of those same images, whether it's through colors or through the building materials themselves. The first being the outdoor pool. Again, this would be located directly south of the existing community center next to the water slides that come outside of the building. And as you see the top picture, it shows it as of today, and the bottom is a architectural rendering of what the entrance of that facility would look like. And again, you're going to see a lot of similarities to the different shapes and sizes of the building, as well as some of the colors and the materials, again, that they would like to use. The building that you see in that architectural drawing would be the front entrance. The window there would be the ticket booth entrance. You have your 2 entrances in, and then your bathhouse off to the right. So again, you'll see a lot of similarities in some of these designs. The aerial view of the site, again, the existing facility to the far north with the water slides on the outside. You'll see the parking lot to the bottom right-hand corner, the 2 buildings with the gray shaded squares there, the right being the bathhouse, the left being this one right here, being the concession stand. We have a wading pool in this area, the leisure pool in that area with a playground. Again, for comparison, the indoor area at the community center is about 4,500 square feet of water surface. This area right here is about 6,500, as well as the lazy river and the 3-slide water slide package here. We have the building mechanical and maintenance, and then a rental area right here for birthday parties and private events. Again, just for a reference, that playground that's out there right now probably sits right about in this area, right there. So you can kind of get an idea of how the outdoor pool would fit into that site. The next is the gym fitness expansion, and this is a picture of, again, of that north wall of the building. As we grow to the north, you can see a lot of the similar metal panels and the structural things that they will bring into play with the windows and the mason. As far as a bird's eye view, as you get into the facility, this area right in here is where the existing basketball courts would be. They will be removed, and all the courts will be put in the north area of the building. So this is the exterior wall of the facility right now. We will pop a couple holes here and create some flow back to the basketball courts. The free weight area that currently exists is right in this area. Probably one of the things we didn't think of as we designed the original building was putting the free weight area being the first thing that you see as you walk into the facility. It's a more noisier crowd, a lot of banging weights. It'll be nice to be able to move the free weight area back into this area here, as well as double it in size. All of the selectorized weight machines that are here will now move into this area. We'll have a stretching area and a dedicated area for group fitness, which will free up an entire zone here of over 3,000 square feet for cardiovascular equipment. You will have a stairway right there to the second level, which will bring you to this point. And as you can see, all the white areas with the X in them are views below. On the second floor, it really is just an expansion of the walking track. Currently, it's 9 laps to a mile. This will bring it down to 4 to 5 laps to a mile. Our architects that we're working with, Olson Lavoie, specifically do projects like this really around the world. And this will be their largest indoor track that they have in a community facility like this. So again, 4 to 5 laps to a mile is an excellent length. And the other thing that we will be able to do is develop some second floor fitness areas here as well. As we get to the recreation center expansion, again, that top photo is a picture today of the existing ice arena. The bottom picture will show you how we're going to expand to a second sheet of ice, as well as put a lobby connection onto the two facilities and really dress up the look of the entire area. Again, you'll see a lot of the burgundy metal panel, a lot of the charcoal CMU, and the different directions of metal panel to tie the whole complex in together, because really it's the entire complex that we're working with here. Mustang baseball to the outdoor pool to the community center. It's really one of the premier recreational complexes in North Dakota. As we get into the bird's eye view of the facility, again, you will have a common lobby right in here that you'll walk into the front doors, and you'll have a choice whether to go this way into the old rink or into the new rink. The two buildings are 35 feet apart, so they are not physically connected as far as this area, but there is a connection link right here, a common hallway, as well as an elevator. This will provide us with finally the opportunity to have a public space in the lobby, so when visitors come to our community for a hockey tournament or for the home show, they'll have an area right in here, not quite as grand as the community center, but finally an area where there will be some soft chairs and some information racks. Currently in the facility, we're not able to do that. The second arena, which is this area on the main floor, will have all of the facility amenities, the locker rooms, the restrooms, Zamboni and mechanical area, seating, as well as a party room for private rentals again. And again, on this picture, it does show the hockey rink. It will be designed for ice to be manufactured year-round. I doubt that will be the case, but it will give us the opportunity, say in the month of July, to have special events, whether that be camps or clinics or either just public skate. But it also enhances our ability to the home show, car shows, private rentals, and things like that. Because again, this facility really is our community event center.
Mr. Kramer.
Yep.
Will you need 2 Zambonis, or you said the wall's 35 feet apart? You're going to need 1 in each building then?
We will have 1 in each building. And a lot of that is dictated by what's going on. You can't always schedule the facilities to specifically have their ice cleaning done at separate times. So there would be 2 Zambonis. There's also 2 refrigeration systems, so everything is really duplicated. The second floor, again, the big X through the white areas is looking down into open space. Here you'll see the seating area with a handicap area, as well as an open vestibule for additional seating or private rentals. And then here you'll see the second floor connection with the hallway, as well as the elevator and public restrooms. As far as the overall estimate, we've been working again hand in hand with Mortenson to continue To kind of nail down a moving number over the past few years, we have just completed, as of last week, the pre-bid estimate. I think that's the easiest way to explain that. What that is basically a month of Mortenson going out and researching local trends, checking with contractors, using their in-house estimating and coming up with what we feel is a very close number of what to expect on bid day. The construction total, $19,425,000, and total project costs of roughly $22,300,000. Hand in hand with that goes the fundraising. As you can see, the ultimate goal is $5 million and the different funding sources. The right column will show you the actual amounts that we have signed pledges for, roughly $2.9 million through the Park District, the Hockey Club, as well as individual fundraisers by the pool group and the ice fundraising. So roughly $2.9 million. That is a quick overview of where we're at with the project, and at this time I'll answer any questions.
Very good presentation, Mr. Kramer.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Just to be clear, and I know you said this, but both buildings in the hockey area will be available for other community events, as you said, like the car show or the home builder show. So in effect, we would be doubling the amount of space, or close to doubling the amount of space available for those shows. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And we've already had those conversations with the home builders and people that are renting the facility currently, as we kind of maneuver their future rentals coming up in the future years and how construction may interfere with their events. But you're absolutely right. And
has Mortenson got to the point where they have an idea of how many different bid packages they will have here? And I know if they do this like they did with the community center, they will not bid all the bid packages on the same day. Have you got to that point yet?
We're not totally nailed down to that point yet. I will say we are researching the different bid packages and going backwards, looking at how we did the original community center. You are correct. We broke it out into 20 to 25 different bid packages, and they were done at 3 different stages. This one might be able to be done all at once, but I think you will see similar bid packages.
Mr. Kramer, did you talk about time and the schedule?
You know, we really haven't narrowed or nailed down a fine-tuned schedule, just because we're not quite sure where this process will take us in the length of time. We are about halfway through having designs ready for a competitive bid.
But you hope to be in construction in 2013?
We do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Will the swimming pool be ready this year yet?
It will not be ready for the summer of 2013.
Mr. Jackson sent me an email earlier today and suggested that we have some information showing a possible way that the city could finance this, and also to explain I guess some of the restrictions that we have on our sales tax money. Just for the commission's information, I guess I have another copy here. I put together some information based upon a project cost of $22.3 million, assuming that the Park Board and their donations would have $1 million in cash, and that the city would have $6 million in cash up front, leaving the amount to be financed at $15.3 million. Now, for this example, I chose a financing term of 7 years. I think you could be aggressive on this project and probably finance it over 5 years, or you could be more conservative and finance it over 10 years. I chose 7, and I used 3%, and I think that would be in the ballpark. It's pretty conservative on the amount of pledge money that you would receive each year. For this example, I'm using $200,000. You can see by if you remember Mr. Kramer's slide, they're have an objective to achieve a much higher number than that. But if we use that, that would leave the city's annual payment at $2,255,000. I'm assuming that we would use the 30% of the 1% sales tax and that we would use the hospitality tax. And for illustrative purposes, I've split that equally between both taxes. And when you turn the page to the worksheet, I've rounded the number up slightly to $1,130,000. But just, you know, to remind the public again, we have the original 1% sales tax, and 30% of that tax by ordinance passed by the voters back in the 90s said that 30% of that shall be dedicated to capital improvements to enhance social and economic vitality of Dickinson and the southwest area. So by capital improvements, that means that it can't be used for operating monies. It's got to go for a project, and a project that relates to I guess the social vitality, the economic vitality, and what the voters meant there was that it wouldn't be used for normal infrastructure like water and sewer. Actually, in the same sales tax, there's language that dedicates 50% to those types of projects. And then the hospitality tax, the definition of how that can be used is actually in Century Code. That's passed by the North Dakota legislature, and the city can't alter that. And what the Century Code is a very short description on how the hospitality tax can be used. And right out of the Century Code, the language is that the hospitality tax must be used generally for tourism or the purchase, equipping, improving, construction, maintenance, repair, and acquisition of buildings or property consistent with visitor attraction and promotion. So it's fairly broad. You can use it to promote tourism, you can use it to operate your buildings, or you can use it to build buildings, as long as these are related to visitor attraction and promotion. And I think this project meets the definition here or meets the requirements for both the 30% and the hospitality tax. It certainly enhances our social and economic vitality of our region. And this building in the past, the hockey building in the past, certainly has worked in terms of visitor attraction and promoting our community. So I've suggested that we use those two funds to fund the project, and the assumptions I've made in terms of sales tax growth is that in 2013 we would have no growth in sales tax revenue over 2012, no growth in 2014, and then from 2015 through 2021 we would average 3% growth per year. With the hospitality tax, I'm a little more conservative that there would be no growth over 2012 from 2013 through 2016, and then from 2017 through 2021 we would have just 2% growth. In the use of funds, I've included not only this project but the other things that we would normally be supporting during the year. You can see that at no time do the balances in the either fund drop to zero or go negative. The 30% fund would be at its lowest point in 2014 at about $500,000. Under this scenario, by the time we would complete 2021, it would be nearly $6 million to the positive. The hospitality fund would drop to a low well, would be at $600,000 at the end of this year, and it would grow to about $1.2 million by 2021. So financially, I think the city can manage this project, and this isn't the only financing scenario that would be available to us, but it is, you know, a scenario, and I think it'd be fair to say a likely scenario. But I wanted to have that available for your information. It would be my recommendation that at our next two meetings, we hold public hearings, allow the public to come in and give further comment about this project and about the financing of it. We would hear their comments, and then the commission would have to decide what it would do. Now, Mr. Kramer, if I remember correctly, I think the Park and Recreation Board has held some public hearings in the past year or so as you've been working on this project. Am I correct on that? And
We've held 3 public forums as well as 2 public hearings throughout the process, throughout the year.
okay, so that would be my recommendation, and we would go from there. But I'm certainly open to thoughts of the commission too on this.
This is a much-needed project. It's an all-age group, and I think after listening to Mr. Mayor and all the other problems we have with youth, we really need to concentrate on having a place for the young people to go to and participate. And also my age group. Not that I go, but I know the mayor goes.
I go, and I know I was not in that demographic group that was the largest group, but I am in that 45 to 64 age group, just barely. And I would have to say that certainly is a very high-quality group, even though it's not the largest group.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, I've got 11 months left of being in that group. But other comments or questions here on the process, or questions for Mr. Kramer?
Mr. President, I like the plan. I think the project is a great project. I think over the last 15 years, we've shown in Dickinson that projects like this really pay for themselves, not just financially, but the cultural aspects of the community, the recreational aspects, everything else. I can't imagine that most people in our community don't agree and don't like the plans that are before us. The funding has been laid out very well. I'm really happy to see that. I would lean personally toward fronting this thing, upfronting it as much as we can. With the growth we're going to have the next few years, you know, there is some uncertainty about revenues and everything else. If we can do this in 5 years, I'd be in favor of that. 7 is fine too, but I'd be in favor of it. I think it's a great project. I think the plan to have a couple of public hearings the next month here or whatever, good plan, and then let's move forward as fast as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Other comments?
Mr. President, I think we need to point out also that we have made the last payment on the West River Community Center, and in 2013, I think our last payment out of the 30% for the DSU Stadium, which is $50,000, will be made, and also the $1 million out of the hospitality tax fund for DSU will also be made this year. So that ends our commitment to that project also.
That's correct.
But the part I like about it, and you know, when we brought in the 30% of the 1 cent, you know, for the social and economic vitality of Dickinson, you know, I think it's important that we did that as a community, and the mind thought was that we deserve this, the people that are staying here and putting our roots down and raising our families here. Yep, it's great when we get the tourism in and so on, but really it's taking care of us people that are here in Dickinson. And this is just a great example of how we're going to keep on doing that for the community.
Thank you, Commissioner Steiner. Other comments? I think you have the luxury of making the financing decision. You could do that at the front end of the project, or you could do it a year from now, because there is I think enough cash to get started and you know, pay our contractors as we go along. And you know, really a year from now, you could make a decision on, do we finance this over 5 years or 7 years or 10 years? A lot of it depending upon what the outlook for sales tax collections are, and really interest rates. I think, you know, you probably have some competing factors here. If I was to guess, I would say interest rates would be a little higher 1 year from now than they are today. And so that might be an argument to lock in at a lower interest rate today. But a year from now, you might be in a stronger position sales tax wise, and be very comfortable in, say, doing a 5-year term versus a 7-year term. So I think you're in a strong position, and you have options that you can choose from. But I have to compliment Parks and Rec and the professionals that you're working with. You've been presenting this project all along, and I think each time you present it, you've fine-tuned it and you've made it stronger. If we can go ahead and do this, that's just going to be a great-looking campus there. The hockey building, which has served us well as a recreation building for many years, is going to get a new facelift, a new addition. And I remember the first time you showed me those elevated sketches of what it would look like, I got confused. I thought I was looking at the expansion to the community center. It looked so good, and I'm very pleased with what I see here. You guys have done a great job.
Thank you.
James, I have one question for you. I believe you mentioned in your slides that you had $2.9 million in cash today in terms of fundraising. Is that right?
That's what is pledged. That is
Oh,
what is actually pledged. I can get an actual in-the-bank amount for you.
I'm assuming that you've incurred expenses, obviously, to this point, and that you're using those funds to pay down those expenses. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay, thanks.
The 22.3 number, does that include the architectural's fee in there? I know it includes the construction management fee.
Yes, it does.
It does, okay. Other comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
Thank you.
Great job. Okay, well, we're just a little bit behind here, so we'll move along. We have a 5:30 public hearing. This is regarding a special use permit for a wireless telecommunications tower. Mr. Kurtan, are you introducing this?
That is correct, Mr. President. This is a petition for approval of a special use permit for a 180-foot monopole telecommunication tower located in the general vicinity of the southwest corner of Highway 10 and 48th Avenue Southwest in the West Dickinson Industrial Park. The setbacks for this tower will be 95 feet from the north, 125 feet from the south, 187 feet from the east, and 32 feet from the west property lines. The Planning and Zoning Commission and city staff recommend approval contingent upon the attached 16 conditions of approval. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtan. You've heard his introduction. Are there any comments by city commissioners before we open the public hearing or question? Not, we'll declare the public hearing open. Anyone that wishes to comment regarding the special use permit may do so now. Just step to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Anybody wish to comment? There's no one from the public that wishes to comment, so we'll close the public hearing. Again, any comments or questions by commissioners? Mr. Curtin or Mr. Colling, you mentioned the special conditions. If we move to approve this special use permit, is that all we have to do? Are the conditions incorporated in there already, or do we have to make mention of them in our motion?
Mr. President, there is a resolution in your packet that details out each of those conditions. Would be Resolution 14-2013.
Okay, so all we have to do is pass the resolution, and that would be covered.
That's correct.
If we're in favor of this, okay. Is there a motion regarding this item?
Mr. President, I'll move that we approve the special use permit for Verizon.
Okay, that's Resolution 14. Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. The next timetable item is a public hearing regarding rezoning petitions. Mr. Colling, do we take these one at a time?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so we'll have, the first then is regarding the mayor first subdivision, and Mr. Curtin, would you introduce that, please?
Mr. President, this is a rezoning petition from rural residential to general commercial for the Mayor subdivision located easterly of 21st Street East and south of I-94. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval contingent upon the one condition that's attached with the adopting resolution. I will read it into the record. Prior to issuance of any building permits for structures on site, the developer shall record a replat of the property. The property shall be replatted to standards consistent with the commercial development. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. Mr. Colling, this is an ordinance, so what is the ordinance number?
Mr. President, this will be Resolution 1501.
Okay, you said resolution, it is ordinance, right?
Ordinance 1501.
Yeah. Now that you're a direct employee of the city, we don't want you to make a habit of those kinds of mistakes, okay?
There's still a probationary period.
Still, okay, good. So this is an ordinance 1501. This would be first reading. At this time, if there is anyone from the public that would like to comment regarding this ordinance, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'd hear your comments. Anyone from the public? Okay, there's no one from the public that wishes to comment. Any comments or questions by city commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve first reading ordinance number 1501.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
We have the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Ullman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. There is a second rezoning petition for the West Bridge First Edition, and Mr. Curtin will introduce that.
Mr. President, this is a rezoning petition to adjust the existing zoning boundaries consistent with the West Ridge First Edition. If you recall last year, the rezoning came forth first part of the year. Several months later, they came back with a final plat. Staff noticed several months ago that the final plat in the zoning districts did not match, were inconsistent with one another. And in essence, this is a housekeeping measure to adjust the boundaries to be, the zoning district boundaries to be consistent with the lot lines. None of the boundaries are changing from what the original approval is, other than being in conformance with the existing plat. Planning and Zoning Commission and city staff would recommend approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Curtin. Mr. Colling, is this 1502? Okay. At this time, if there's anyone from the public that would like to comment on ordinance 1502, you may do so now. Come to the podium, state your name, and we'd hear your comments. Anybody from the public? There's no one from the public that wishes to comment. Is there a motion regarding 1502?
I'll make a motion to approve first reading ordinance 1502.
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. That concludes the timetable agenda. We'll move back to the non-timetable agenda. And we have item D, which is request for qualifications for a public safety center. And Mr. Kessel, I think you're introducing this one.
Thank you, Mayor. For several months now, we've been discussing the Public Safety Center, bringing it up at meetings and such. It is on our capital improvement plan. The Public Safety Center itself would be a joint building for the police and main fire department stations. This facility would be located north of the intersection of 21st and States on the west side of the street, the west side of State Street. If built, the police department would likely exit the current law enforcement center location. Not all services would exit that building, though. We would still have dispatch and access to the indoor shooting range, things such as that. We may, throughout the process, depending on expenses, if we can move the dispatch center to the new public safety facility, that may be in our best interest. But at this point, dollars may preclude us from doing so. The current main fire substation, located just a couple blocks from this building itself, would become a substation and still in use. The anticipated cost of the building is between $6 and $8 million, with a $1.5 million grant that we already have in our possession, or at least the access to it. You will have many opportunities to essentially change your mind or provide input throughout this project, assuming that the RFQ is approved this evening. And we would like to have at least one member of the commission, if you're interested, serve on the board to select the RFQ responses, or the team that will engineer and architecturally draw this project for us. The RFQ itself defines the scope of work. It provides minimum qualifications for anybody who would like to do the work, and goes through all of the general provisions that would be necessary to make sure it's completed. All of the RFQ responses would have to be back to the City Hall by April 22nd at 3 p.m., at which point we would begin our review process. If we decide to move forward with the awarding of the RFQ, that means that that firm would then move to the design stage of this building. So in summary, the RFQ is to allow us to identify an architectural and engineering firm to design the public safety center moving down the road. So that would conclude my report unless there's any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. Mr. Colling, is there anything you would add to this?
No, Mr. President, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Any comments or questions then by city commissioners?
If we approve this now just for the design and down the road, how long does it, on April 22nd it's turned in, and then 3 p.m. April 30th is the submittal of what?
And I apologize. I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner Dukart. In your document, it does use April 30th as the date. We have changed that. There was actually 2 different dates in there. We've revised it, so it is April 22nd. That does allow a little over 4 weeks for submittals to be brought to us.
And then in the event that is approved, then what is the target date for this building?
If we select, once the RFQ is, we have multiple firms, hopefully, that we'll be able to choose from. We select a firm, we engage in a contract, they then design that facility. I wouldn't expect that we would see anything in the ground until next year. It would be, I think, very, very aggressive to see anything in the ground yet this year.
So 2014, the end of?
I think you would see construction begin in the spring and hopefully completion by the end of the construction season.
My concern is there's so much building going on that end of the city, and we're still located downtown as far as fire, and same with the police. I'm sure they're getting a little overcrowded. So my only comments.
Thank you.
Are there other comments? Would there be a motion that would authorize the issuing of the RFQ?
I'll move we proceed with the RFQ.
Mr. Jackson moves the motion. Mr. Steiner, are you prepared to second it?
Second.
Mr. Steiner seconds the motion. Other discussion? I guess, you know, I would just make one comment that we've gone ahead and bid and approved the Public Works building, and the Public Safety Center and Public Works building essentially use the same sources of funds, which would be the half-cent sales tax, the general fund, and the oil impact fund. And while the need is great for this, and it'd be nice if we could do them both concurrently, but we probably have to do them consecutively to kind of let those funds replenish so we can finance this also. So I think that's part of the reason for delaying this one until after we had the public service or Public Works building bid, and we know, you know, what the cost is on that building. And we still don't really know in terms of impact funding to what extent the legislature will be funding Dickinson. But by the time we get to April 22nd, we should be there or within a week or so of knowing. So.
Okay, I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I know that, can the fire be started ahead of or do they have to be both joined at the same time, the fire and the police?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think, you know, once you've selected an architect and an engineer, they could probably tell you that. I have a feeling that they're going to be started and completed at the same time, but that may not be the case.
I should also mention that there are, if we choose to, there are other entities that would like to have an office, so to speak, in this building and pay a fee to be located here. So there may be a revenue stream that could be brought into the structure. I'm not suggesting it would be a lot, but there is the potential to house other entities. And I think we have to be careful to make sure that our purposes are designed in first, since we do have a limited site size. But if we can accommodate, they would be partner or sister agencies to the fire and police department, and ones that we could consider, as long as our needs are met first.
Can you elaborate?
Well, there's the Highway Patrol. We work closely with them. They are making adjustments to their buildings, so they may no longer be interested. But there's several other law enforcement agencies out there that are currently don't reside in the LEC or would like to see space, including, the Drug Task Force, FBI, and other agencies such as that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else? We did get the motion in the second, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Oltmans?
Aye.
Mrs. Dukart?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. We'll go to item E. This is a series of contract service agreements, and Mr. Colling is going to explain the process to us here and what these involve.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. We do have a series of engineering agreements to present to you tonight. In total, there are 11 agreements represented here. As you all know, there are two engineering firms that have provided a number of services to the city over the past several years, Cannabis, Lee & Jackson and Apex. They have both proposed task order agreements. The way these agreements work is that the basic terms of service under which the engineering firms provide services to the city are represented in one master service agreement. This contains all of the major terms of service, terms of payment, standards of performance, the use of the documents that the engineering firms produce, the controlling law under which they represent or provide services to the city, and a number of other general matters. Then, once this master service agreement is approved, it allows the engineering firm to create a task order for each specific project. So that way it allows us, I think, to streamline the process a little bit so that when a new engineering project comes up, we only need to approve the specific task order for that agreement rather than reiterate a lot of the terms of service that would otherwise be contained within the master service agreement. As proposed to you, there are master service agreements for both Cadmus Lee and Jackson and for Apex Engineering. I can detail out for you the specific task orders if you wish me to do so, Mr. President, or however you wish to take these agreements.
Well, I think here's what I would suggest, that we act on these two master agreements, and then you have these task agreements, and we can go through them one at a time. But we would act separately on the Apex agreement and the KLJ agreement.
Correct.
And so that, to get things rolling, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the master service agreement for Apex, and then we can go into discussion and so on and so forth.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the master service agreement regarding Apex? Not, we'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, the motion carries. Would there be a motion then to approve the master service agreement with KLJ?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I think it'd be best if I abstain from the votes on the KLJ agreements.
I understand. Any other discussion? Not, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman? Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. The chair votes aye, so the motion carries. Now, Mr. Colling will take us through these task agreements, and as I understand it, again, Mr. Colling, we act on those separately.
That's correct, Mr. President.
So why don't you take us through one, we'll act on it, and we'll go that way.
I should note as well, representatives from both KLJ and Apex are in the audience and may be able to detail out some of these agreements better than I can, but I'll take a stab at it and they can correct me if I err. The first task order that, excuse me, first task order that I will present to you is the task order number 1 from Apex. This project is the West Lift Station in Force Main, and it is a engineering agreement to provide engineering and construction management services for that project. The fee for this project is an adjustable percent scale based upon costs of construction. We don't know the cost of construction for this project as of yet, and I don't believe that a engineer's estimate has been prepared at this point, so the exact engineering fees that the city would owe on this project are not determined at this point until construction is going to be commenced, going to be bid.
Each of these task projects that we're being asked to act on tonight, though, are in the comprehensive plan, and there is an estimate within the plan on them. Would that be correct?
I believe that is correct, Mr. President. Mr. Corton can probably...
That is correct,
Detail
Mr.
that.
President.
Okay.
They have been noted in the capital improvement plan, and the appropriate fees, as you've mentioned, were shown as estimates.
And these are the projects that the city staff, I think along with Commissioner Jackson's involvement, have looked at and determined that these are our top priorities that we need to move on quickly to get into this construction season. And they involve a variety of wastewater and water projects. Is that correct? So. And Mr. Jackson, I probably should just ask you to explain it, but.
Well, I think you said that right, but I would add too that in my opinion, with all 11 of these task orders, and I'm sure both firms would agree with this, that we're going to have to review this in an ongoing manner. There may be a project here or two that we decide to delay for a year or two, and that we could delay some of the engineering, and that we'll have to be flexible, I hope, as we move forward with that.
Well, and then we have our new engineer, Mr. Watson, who, he's only been here a week, but after he's been here 3 weeks, he may change all the priorities on us too, so we'll see.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah. So I think the message is we're going to need some flexibility. So, Mr. Colling, you have introduced task order number 1, and that's for Apex, and that is for the 21st Street project. Is that
No, Mr. President, this
No.
one is for the West Lift Station in Force Main.
West Lift Station? Okay, we're not going in the order that they're here. So we would be looking for a motion to approve that task number 1.
I'll move we approve that task order.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have the motion and the second. Questions, discussion here by commissioners? All right, we'll go ahead and vote, and then if there are no questions or discussions, Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Ullman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next task order is for the 21st Street reconstruction project. This is labeled S1. This is a KLJ project, and it is the reconstruction of 21st Street from 30th Avenue West to State Avenue. City staff would recommend approval.
And 30th Avenue West is the avenue that runs from exit 59 north. So-
Correct.
Okay. Would there be a motion regarding the approval of this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Jackson, will you be abstaining on all the KLJ ones here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I will.
Any other any discussion at all? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. Chair votes aye. So the motion carries.
Next task order is labeled as S2. This is a KLJ project. This one is for the reconstruction of State Avenue from 21st Street West north to 40th Street West. I should note that all of these KLJ projects, as far as compensation, are identified as an estimated maximum fee. If there are services that we can, through our city staff and our new city engineer, provide for ourselves as a city, it will reduce the cost of that engineering service that we would otherwise pay an outside consultant. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Would there be a motion regarding the S2 KLJ project?
So move. Approve.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next task order is labeled S3 by KLJ. This task order is for the reconstruction of 25th Avenue East from I-94 Business Loop north to 10th Street East.
Where is that?
That is on the east side of town. Mr. Kessel will identify it here. Basically from the Business Loop on the east side of,
Okay.
what is that? Dan Porter Motors, I believe, is the business on the
Right.
loop, and then it goes
Okay.
north from there.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion regarding S3 with KLJ?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just clarification, do you say this was from 25th Avenue East, from I-94 to 10th Street?
Correct.
But the task order states number S2.
Yes, Commissioner Steiner, I believe it's mislabeled on here. We will get that corrected. It is S3.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next task order is labeled S4. This is a KLJ project again, and this is for the reconstruction of 40th Street East from Highway 22 east to 4th Avenue East. And I think Mr. Kessel will identify that map. 40th Street East from Highway 22 4th. Yep, that.
Okay. Everybody clear where that is? This goes east from Highway 22. Yep, okay. Would there be a motion to approve this task order?
So moved.
We have the motion and the second. Further discussion? Hearing none, will vote. Mr. Ullman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next task order is labeled W1. Again, this is a KLJ project, and this one is for the Water Distribution Master Plan. As you're aware, KLJ has been our consultant for the comprehensive plan. As part of that, they have developed a water model for the city of Dickinson, and this task order would provide for KLJ to extend that water model to a number of additional subdivisions and areas that are being added to the city of Dickinson. The specific subdivisions we're looking at are the Pinecrest addition, the Creekside addition, the KLJ subdivision on the southeast side of town, and some areas surrounding the new Public Works facility on Energy Drive and I-94.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Colling. So this is task order W-1 for KLJ. Would there be a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Ullman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next task order is labeled W2. This is a KLJ project, and this is for constructing, or the engineering for construction of a new water pumping facility. The project will be constructed by Southwest Water Authority adjacent to the city's existing water treatment plant. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Colling. Any questions or comments regarding this project? Will there be a motion to approve task W-2 for KLJ?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion?
President Johnson, if I may, the construction of this facility will also require an agreement with Southwest Water. We are working towards that as we speak. This is a very important project in order to distribute water to our system as a whole. It's one of the primary. If there is a priority within a priority, this is one of those.
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. Any other comments? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, if you recall, our comprehensive plan identified some issues within the city with respect to water pressure in certain zones within the city. The next two task orders are designed to remedy those problems. Task order W1 is engineering for the construction of a 1 million gallon storage facility for pressure zone 2, along with an 18-inch transmission line. Mr. President.
You used W1 once before.
I say W1, this is W3.
W3, okay.
I'll get it right here.
And this with KLJ again. All right. So water storage. Any comments or questions by commissioners? Would there be a motion to approve W3?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. I don't think there's any other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains again. Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the last task order I have is W4. Again, this is a KLJ project. This task order is for a 500,000 gallon storage facility in pressure zone 3, along with the transmission fill line and some associated water system improvements. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Colling. Would there be a motion to approve task order W4 for KLJ?
Where's this one at?
This will be on the northwest side of town, and its approximate location would be in the Pinecrest subdivision, probably up in this area somewhere.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mr. Stuckert.
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mr. Oldman.
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains. Chair votes aye. The motion carries. Any others, Mr. Colling?
That is it, Mr. President.
That should give Mr. Watson enough to do. So, I think then we're just down to reports here by the city administrator.
Thank you, President Johnson. Just the hiring journal for you this evening. The report is included. I'll just summarize quickly. We have an opening for street maintenance operator, sanitation office assistant, 3 police officers, a communications specialist, a part-time library assistant, a payroll, a patrol sergeant, 2 internal openings, 1 for a city forester and 1 for a senior water utility operator, representing 10 total openings and 9.5 FTEs. They are all in various stages of the hiring process. Obviously, we hope to fill these soon, especially the police officer position, since there are 3 of them that are open. One other point of consideration, again, this evening, I just want to remind the commission, hopefully next meeting, we have an HR assistant that's been authorized for a half-time position, and with the inclusion of Mr. Colling on our staff, we'd like to make that a full-time position. And we'll bring to you at our next meeting the payroll, or excuse me, the how we intend to pay for that additional half-time person. So with that, that would conclude my report, other than to say, if anybody is interested that is watching, you can download a city application for these positions at the website, our website, which is www.dickinsongov.com, and then submit those to our HR coordinator, Shelley Nominuk.
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. I know that at the end of last week, you traveled to Minneapolis, do some presentations regarding possible investment in our community. Can you just give us a quick report on what that was about?
Certainly, Mayor Johnson. I spent Thursday evening providing a presentation to about 70 different investors in the Minneapolis area. Then on Friday, a similar presentation to about 300 potential investors to our area. Some already have been investing in Dickinson, and I'm happy to say, as a follow-up to an earlier presentation this evening, the ones that have been in Dickinson have been very impressed and pointed out specifically the West River Community Center as a quality of life issue and a building that is second to none in most of their eyes, and that includes facilities within the Minneapolis area or region. In terms of people, anytime you give a presentations, there's a multitude that come to you afterwards and say, geez, I'm coming, I'm on the way. I met the individual from New York who is trying to buy some land right here in Dickinson. So it's always nice to touch base with them, kind of lay out our thoughts and our ideas right away. And in particular, that land and specifically is probably another one that needs a water tower. So as long as we can meet, discuss all of the items that they will have to do to that property, they can then buy it right, so to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kessel. Are there any other comments or questions for the city administrator? All right, then we'll move to public safety, and we'll hear from the fire department. Chief Sivak.
Good evening, President Johnson, Commissioners. We're going to vary our presentation just a little bit this evening. The monthly report, which we're going to start with, is going to be presented to you tonight by Senior Fire Inspector Mark Selly.
President, Commissioners, first time, so give me a little bit. This is our monthly report for February 2013. This is our incident responses we had. We had 27 in the month of February, which is a 17% increase over 2012, which we had 23, and a 50% increase over 2011 of 18. Shows kind of a small picture what we had. This is kind of the big picture. If you notice our responses over the last 5 years for February, we've increased over 125% from 2009. It's been a pretty steadily increase, and that's kind of the start of the oil boom for us, and we can see our responses increasing every month. Yeah, if you notice in our annual report coming up, we'll have a large amount of 399 calls for 2012. Fire prevention activities for 2013, we had 158 total activities, including 57 routines, 42 follow-ups, 35 constructions, which includes your construction inspections, your sprinkler tests, and your alarm tests, as long as the plan reviews and miscellaneous and others. February activities, or regular training, we had auto extrication and truck inventory. Our auto extrication, if you've noticed in past reports, has been going up, or regular trainings. Reason being, as of February 15th, the Dickinson Fire Department took over for auto extrication in the city limits. So we're responsible for all that in the city limits. Special operations training, we did rapid intervention training. North Dakota State Fire School was this month, or was in February. In Minot, we had 8 members that attended classes. We also had 2 members that were there as instructors. These 2 members are Curtis Freeman and Dusty Grosseluk. They did a oil field safety class, and they've been receiving quite a few calls to do this again. It's been very well represented, and they really like the course, and the other departments are looking for more of this information. Also in February, we had a awards banquet for our volunteers and our full-time staff. We had 5-year membership or pins that were given out to our chaplain Tim Pravotsky, firefighter Mitch Gilseth, Lieutenant Sean Schumacher, firefighter Andy Crisco, and we also have another firefighter that's not on this list, and that's excuse me, Scott Heidecker. We had a 10-year service pin given to firefighter Tom Irwin, 20-year service pin given to Captain Deb Barrows, and 25-year service pin to Captain Hillary Hartman, Secretary Treasurer Barney Tomanek, and Lieutenant Jerry Brittle. And that concludes the report for February. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And with that, we'll go into the 2012 annual report of the Dickinson Fire Department. And that is the Dickinson Fire Department, Sarah 1900. And although there are days that I feel like it, contrary to popular belief, I am not on that picture.
Is Chief Baselug on there?
Although he is in the audience, Chief Baselug is not on that picture. He's on the left side.
He was done by that, wasn't he? Yeah, he's retired by now.
In 2012, the membership of the Dickinson Fire Department consisted of 32 volunteer firefighters with 6 full-time staff, 2 volunteer chaplains, and 3 reserve firefighters. The number remains consistent from year to year. 7 members left us in 2012, mainly due to job changes. All 7 had been with us less than 12 months. Years of service is reflected by this graph. A rapid turnover does not just affect the full-time positions, it affects the volunteers also. Currently, 47% of our firefighters have 5 years or less on the department. Although we have ongoing recruitment efforts that help us to maintain around 38 members, we have not been able to significantly increase those numbers. Training is more important than ever to our department. Not only are we seeing an increase in calls for service, in some cases we're seeing incidents we've not seen before, explosions, meth labs, hazardous materials incidents. Collectively, our firefighters invested 3,304.25 hours of training in 2012, which is an all-time high for us. Incidents by year, we show a 399 incidents in 2012, 399 calls for service. Now that compares to Minot, North Dakota. Minot Fire Department had 594 calls for service, not including medical, and ours are not including medical either, 399. 40% increase over 11, 66% increase over 2010, 83% increase over 2009. The anomaly of 2008 there is explained because in 2008 and prior to 2008, we would send a response to automobile accidents where there was any amount of fluid spilled on the road, no matter how much. Well, thanks to input from the Dickinson Police Department and some research on our own behalf, we found a little known section in municipal code, buried in municipal code, that stated for the common amount of flammable or combustible or liquid spill at a vehicle accident, that's actually up to the towing company to take care of that, unless it's an excessive amount that they can't handle with what they have on board. So in 2009, we stopped going to those calls. So 53 calls less was the end result by pushing that back to the towing companies. We unfortunately have regained that ground, though, in just our regular responses. Incident report, incident by type is demonstrated by this graph. Actual fires, 44. Explosions, 3. And just to kind of expound on that a little bit, one was a meth lab, one was an event at the Baylor building, and one was an incident at Baker Hughes. Again, going just with the building or the fire calls that we had, this graph signifies the breakdown of that from building fires, cooking fires, vehicle fires, and then the other category, that may take just a little bit of explanation. There was a chair on a deck that somebody lit on fire, and a molten sulfur spill that resulted in a fire. Otherwise, they're pretty well self-explanatory. This graph represents 2012 comparison to 11 and 10 by month. The red line on top being 2012, the green line 11, the blue line 2010. The only month where we were less than a previous year was the month of December. This is what the city limit line looked like in 2011. Once again, and I know I've talked to you about this several times, the inner circle, the orange area, represents the recommended 1.5 mile travel distance for a pumper from the central fire station, which would be in the center of that circle. The shaded area beyond that, the yellow area, if you will, is the recommended 2.5 mile travel distance for an aerial apparatus. Now, that recommended travel distance is actually road miles, but there's really no way for us to accurately depict that to you other than the circle, which is really a by the crows fly, how the crow flies method, you know, but it gets us kind of in the ballpark to where our travel distances are, all the same. This is 2012. The blue line represents the city limit line at the end of 2012. As our boundaries continue to expand, our travel distances become longer, response times continue to increase. A fire station in the northwest area is absolutely a necessity, especially as we see the development and the activity around exit 59. Our response times are reflected by this graph. 69% of the time we had somebody on scene in less than 9 minutes. A majority of that time, that was probably one individual with a personal vehicle, probably the officer on call. There's not a whole lot they can do other than report back what they actually find, and that's very helpful. Scene size up is very helpful, but as far as actual mitigation, there's not much they can do until others get there. That's represented by this, and you've heard this before. Actually, we started presenting this to you in 2009. NFPA 1720 states that a combination department such as ours should be able to have 15 firefighters on scene of a structure fire within 9 minutes, 90% of the time. In 2012, we did not meet that guideline at all. The red area, the red bar, represents engine 501. The top number on each one of those, of course, is the number of minutes it took 501 to get there. 501 will respond with 2 to 6 firefighters on board, and that's always a variable depending on response, but still a far cry from the 15 that 1720 asks for. The 15 personnel is the green area, and the number on top of those green bars is the approximate number of personnel we had on scene, and the number of minutes shown on the bar on the left. In 2011 and in 2010, in 2011 we did not meet this either. 2010, if I'm not mistaken, we met it only one time. Fire dollar loss, increased property values, along with increased call volume, are contributing to a higher fire dollar loss. See where we're at. 2007, again, that was the Old Elks Club fire. 2012, we had one major event that contributed about $800,000 of that loss, and that was the J.C. Penney fire. Fire protection cost per capita, we're using the 25,000 estimated population. That seems to be commonly accepted as approximately where we're at right now. In 2012, our cost per capita remains very reasonable based on that percentage of population, even with the unprecedented growth. We received an insurance premium rebate check in 2012 for $67,771. There's currently a House bill under consideration that could double that amount for us on a yearly basis, House Bill 1145. Equipment replacement is an area that's causing us some concern. We have a truck committee together to spec a truck this year to bid and purchase in 2014, which we had hoped would coincide with a new facility available for that truck to be parked in. As currently, we wouldn't have room for the truck anyway. The truck we're trying to replace is Unit 506, which is 12 years beyond its recommended service life of 20 years for a pumper. Unit 506 is not cooperating with us in our plans of it living out its useful life. We're having transmission problems with it. It just started about a month ago. We've been actively trying to resolve the problem. We can't purchase a rebuilt transmission for it because they don't exist. So our option is removing the transmission, having it shipped away, and having that one rebuilt. And we're currently exploring what that would actually cost. It would take that truck, which is actually still a frontline pumper, it would take that truck out of service probably 2 to 3 weeks. This event, and there's no way to plan for equipment maintenance like this really, is really beginning to jam us up. In 2009, we came to you when we purchased that truck and we laid out a 5-year plan, and it all looked like it was going to work at that point in time. Once every 5 years, we'd lease purchase a truck. When that lease purchase was done, we'd be ready for another one, be exceeding our pumper lifespan, but at that point in time, it looked like it was all going to work out. We're going to need a truck in 2014. We may need another sooner than the 5 years we had planned for, based on not only growth of the community, but based on the ability to maintain the equipment we have. I'm going to stop at that point and turn the rest of the presentation, beginning with fire prevention, over to our fire prevention specialist, Deb Barrows.
Mr. President, Commissioners, good evening. And as Bob said, I'm going to be presenting the fire prevention report. That statement on the top of the slide is a direct quote from ISO. It's hard to quantify the efforts made toward fire prevention and fire safety education, but they seem to think that there's enough evidence to support that if we can prevent the fire from happening in the first place, it's less likely, of course, or the more we do to prevent the fire, it won't be a major event. And better yet, not have one at all, right? That's the goal of fire prevention. So if you look at it, let's say that fire prevention then is our first opportunity to achieve fire safety. And we can do that in a couple of different ways. Enforcement of the adopted fire code, looking at the building design, and then educating the occupants of that building and our citizens. Keep in mind that building codes and other related codes will address the original design or the major renovation of a building. The fire code maintains that building for its useful life. So the fire department gets in those buildings quite often, maybe not as often as we'd like today because of how busy we've become. But we're in there looking at the change. Has it changed since the design of the structure? We can get our inspectors in that building and they can look, actually get eyes on the scene and see what's going on inside that structure. Most building fires are started by heat sources and the materials that are brought into the building, not necessarily what was built into it as it's designed. So the architects and builders provide a limited fire protection in their design of each individual building constructed. It's up to the building owners, the managers, and its occupants, however, that will have numerous opportunities throughout the life of that structure to reduce the fire risks through fire prevention. So when we do our fire inspections, that provides us the opportunity to educate those owners, managers, and occupants of those buildings on fire prevention. Here are our statistics on what the fire department has conducted in inspections for 2012. We currently have 3 personnel that will do fire inspections within corporate city limits. We conducted a total of 1,577 inspections in 2012. We are inspecting multifamily structures with 3 or more dwelling units that have a common access, and all commercial properties in those numbers that you see. We are inspecting these locations now about every 2 years. That's how long it's taking us to get through our locations due to the increase in numbers. We're estimating that we've increased our inspection locations from 2011 over 100. We don't know a definite amount because it's taking us 2 years to get there, so we know that that growth is probably higher than 100. With the additional fire inspector that was hired in July of 2012, advances in the technology we're using, we've increased our routine and follow-up inspections. We are really focusing on plan reviews and paying more attention to the design process so as to ensure fire safety objectives are established earlier. By doing this, we can identify alternative methods to meet these objectives, and then engineering decisions can be made early on, which is more effective and more economical. When we look at plan reviews, which is not reflected in this graph, but it will be in 2013, we look at 6 principles of fire safety strategies. 1, how do we design the building to slow the initial growth and spread of a fire, the detection of a fire within that building, suppression that is needed by code, and how to maintain that. Compartmentation, can we confine the fire to a room of origin or even smaller subdivision of that structure? And how do we evacuate the occupants of that building? We're also looking at how the design facilitates our fire department operations should we need to fight a fire at that structure. We want to look at the neighbors. Each building has fire safety objectives unique to its use. So we want to see how the effect of a fire would be on other exposures surrounding that building. We also are going to look at runoff that is going to be a byproduct of that firefighting operation. And then we look at the effect of the fire to the firefighter personnel as they're responding. And finally, which we've talked about tonight at the City Commission meeting, is do we have adequate water supply for our operations? With the growth of the city and the time it is taking us to get back into the building, which is every 2 years, it's very important that fire prevention is looked at more closely from the start and the design of the structure. And we can also do pre-incident scene surveys to help us in our planning and strategy techniques for operations at a fire. This is the total number of fire inspections that we conducted throughout the year, which is 1,577. And as you can see, the numbers are very consistent. It's taking us longer, however, to get back into those locations due to the increased numbers of locations and other staff and other demands of our staff, not just fire prevention, for training, attending classes, and responding to fire calls. Public education is part of fire prevention and is extremely important. As we've talked about before, this is what helps us reduce the risk of fire and injury to our people, to our community. It is ongoing, and we utilize all media avenues available to bring fire safety messages to our citizens. All staff is involved, including the volunteer firefighters. You can see here that the greatest majority of our education to our public is through Fire Prevention Week, which you've heard us talk about. We addressed safety lessons to over 1,000 students last year, ranging from preschool through college. We witnessed fire drills in all public and private schools, including Dickinson State University. Our staff also conducts fire extinguisher training throughout the year for anyone that is requesting that. civic and private organizations, and we also coordinate the citywide spring cleanup, which you'll be hearing about in the future. We're also, we also do special events, special public relation events. Through the 4th of July, we're very active in those events too. So in summary then, fire prevention maintains the building during its useful life. We ensure the building is used as it was designed. We strive to keep ignition from happening and provide education to the occupants to do the same. We educate occupants how to escape if needed. The fire department we also check to make sure that the fire department can conduct its fire operations should we need to be there, and do we have the resources needed to be successful. This concludes the fire prevention and annual report for 2012, and I believe Chief Sivak or myself can answer any questions there may be.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for our fire department personnel? Very thorough report. Thank you. Next, we'll hear a report of the police department. Chief Dossinger.
Trying to sabotage you, Dusty. Another step to add to the report, I guess. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Commission. I have before you the 2013 monthly report for February, followed by the 2012 annual report. As you can see, for the month of February in 2013, we had a total of 67 total accidents. We had 0 injury reported accidents and 17 hit and run accidents. It's been at least since 2011 since we actually had 0 injury reported accidents in a month, so that's a very good statistic for us. There were a total of 526 total traffic stops conducted, 192 warnings issued, and 396 citations issued for the month of February. Comparing the January and February 2012-2013 calls for service, you can see for the month of February we were down again, 1,654 calls for service, compared to that in 2012, which had 2,060 calls for service. Are there any questions on the monthly report? If not, I'll go into the 2012 annual report. We'll start off with our template. This is what we were allocated to have as far as positions in 2012. Total of 51 full-time employees, 1 part-time employee, and 15 full-time non-sworn employees. As you can see, the division is divided by a chief. It's divided up into 2 captains, a support services captain, an operations captain. The support services captain oversees the public safety center, which is dispatch, also oversees records, and the investigative division, which consists of a total of 4 people in that department, and also the drug task force officer. The operations captain basically is our street captain, oversees our street division, oversees 4 patrol sergeants, the animal control officer, 22 patrol officers, and also the truck reg officer. Total staffing for 2012, we were allocated to have 36 positions. As you can see, we started out the year with 30. We ended the year with 34 in December. Traffic services, there are a total of 1,238 traffic accidents reported in 2012. 253 of those were accidents were hit and run accidents. There are a total of 60 injury reported accidents for the year, and unfortunately 3 of those accidents resulted in fatalities. There were a total of 6,829 traffic stops conducted for the year. 2012 monthly property accidents, these are the accidents that occur in public streets. They don't occur in parking lots, and these are not hit and run accidents. As you can see, December led the year with 109, and our lowest was in September with 61. Accidents based on day of the week, as you can see, Friday we have most of the accidents reported to us in our community, and Sunday we have the fewest traffic crashes reported to us. Most accidents occur as far as hours of the day. From noon to 6 p.m. we field most of the traffic crashes, and from midnight to 6 a.m. we have the lowest amount of traffic crashes. Kind of a comparison of the amount of traffic stops conducted in years past. As you can see, we have greatly stepped up our traffic enforcement efforts. Traffic stops based on day of the week. Saturday we're the most active with their traffic stops, and Sunday we have the fewest amounts of traffic stops conducted. Traffic stops based on hour of the day. From 6 p.m. to midnight we conduct the most, and from midnight to 6 a.m. Is our quiet time as far as traffic stops. There's not a whole lot of traffic on our streets, anywhere after 3 in the morning. Calls for service for 2012. We ended the year with 24,843 calls, an increase from 2010, 2009, and 2011. Comparison of monthly calls for service. You can see the blue line there is 2012, the yellow line 2011, and the purple line 2010. You can see a steady growth there for us. You can kind of tell that there is a trend that it shows. Calls for service based on the day of the week. Our busiest days is Tuesdays, and Sundays is our quietest day. Busiest hour of the day for us is from noon to 6 p.m., and the quietest is from midnight to 6 a.m. Kind of taking a look at day of the week. Monday, our quietest time is from midnight to 6 a.m. Noon to 6 p.m. is our busiest period of time. Tuesdays again, midnight to 6 a.m. is our quietest, followed up by noon to 6 p.m. as our busiest time. And same trend for Wednesday. Thursday, there's a slight change. From midnight to 6 a.m. is our quiet time, but from 6 a.m. to noon is our busiest time. Friday kicks off the weekend. From 6 p.m. to midnight, we stay fairly active. A lot of calls are coming in at that time, and from midnight to 6 a.m. is our quiet time. Saturdays again, from 6 p.m. to midnight is our busiest time, and from midnight to 6 a.m. on Saturdays our call numbers are a little down. Sundays from noon to 6 is our busy time, and from 6 a.m. to noon is our quiet time. Kind of a summary, most calls for service based on the days of the week are Tuesdays and Fridays. Most calls for service based on the time of day is from noon to 6 p.m. and from 6 a.m. to noon. The busiest hours is from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays, followed by 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Thursdays, and 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Thursdays, followed by 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Mondays. Kind of a summary of some of the high-risk calls. You can see that we had a fairly large increase in the number of fight calls that we responded to in 2012. Some number, and also drug offenses were greatly increased. We have a criminal investigative unit, which consists of a 4-member department. They worked a total of 767 cases last year. 43 of those were cases assisting other agencies, such as social services, immigration and customs enforcement, FBI, Stark County Sheriff's Department, and the state's attorney's office. They did have 32 call-outs. They do have an active list of approximately 36 sex offenders that they do compliance checks on a regular basis for last year. And there were 5 arrests through ICAC, which is internet crimes against children. One resulted in a federal prosecution and a 10-year conviction. Our dispatch center, last year, they answered over 20,000 911 calls. They dispatched for 22 agencies, including ambulance, fire and rescue, and law enforcement. And they have 10 communication specialists or dispatchers. The Southwest Narcotics Task Force, you can see that methamphetamine was the most popular case that they worked with last year, and they did have one cocaine case last year. One case was for cocaine was initiated involving cocaine. A total of 104 grams of cocaine were seized with a street value of approximately $15,600. Prescription drugs remains a problem in our area. There are a total of 11 cases were initiated involving prescription drug diversion, to include possession with a prescription, theft, and doctor shopping. There are a total of 56 dosage units and 30 grams of powder were seized with a street value of $7,440. There were a total of 36 cases initiated involving methamphetamine or methamphetamine paraphernalia, to include possession and delivery. There are a total of 53.7 grams of meth seized for approximate street value of over $16,000. There are also 102 items of methamphetamine paraphernalia seized with a street value of over $500. In our area in 2012, we saw a change in the type and quality of marijuana with the legalization of medical marijuana in Montana. We did see a large increase in high-grade, hydroponically grown marijuana, as well as street prices tripling. A total of 29 cases were initiated involving marijuana and marijuana paraphernalia, to include possession and delivery. There were over 1,600 grams of marijuana seized with a street value of over $40,000. There were also 112 items of marijuana paraphernalia seized with a street value of $560. A critical drug took hold of our area in 2012, some synthetic hallucinogens, as Mr. Mayor had mentioned from the Sunrise Youth Bureau before in his conversation. Commonly known as synthetic marijuana, K2, K3, or spice, are becoming a major threat in our area. Long-term effects of this new drug is unknown, but has shown to cause severe effects to the brain and internal organs, as well as death. The new drug has become popular with high school-age juveniles as well as persons on probation, since it doesn't show up on a typical urinalysis test. A total of 8 cases were initiated involving synthetic hallucinogens in our area. A total of 1,274 grams of synthetic hallucinogens were seized with a street value of over $19,000. With the assistance of the Bismarck Police Department and Metro Area Narcotics Task Force, the Southwest Narcotics Task Force was able to shut down a mobile head shop business, ran out of the Gladstone and Richardson area. Thanks to new legislation, synthetic hallucinogens have been added to the controlled substance list, and local sales have been prohibited. However, it is still easily obtained over the internet. Taking a look at the seized narcotics, as a result of the enforcement actions and the assistance of the federal and local agencies, an estimated total of $177,000 in illegal narcotics and assets used in the commission of the crimes in 2012 were seized. Forfeited assets include those that are involved in the commission of trafficking narcotics, such as vehicles, four-wheelers, RVs. Like I said, there's over $76,000 seized in that. Marijuana, over $41,000 seized. And methamphetamine, over $16,000 seized. And cocaine, over $15,000 seized. We do have the Southwest Tactical Team ran out of our department. In 2011, there was a total of 8 team activations, which consisted of 6 potentially armed subjects, 1 homicide warrant service, and 1 high-risk search warrant. Activation in 2011 included 6 in Dickinson, 1 in Billings County, and 1 in Stark County. In 2012, we had 11 team activations. 7 of those involved high-risk search warrants, and 4 potentially armed subjects. Activation by location in 2012 included 5 in Dickinson, 2 in Stark County, 2 in Adams County, 1 in Billings County, and 1 in Hettinger County. Right now in 2012, we have 14 active team members. 12 are internal members of the Dickinson Police Department. 1 is from Dunn County, and 1 is from Hettinger County. In 2012, we had a total of 1,787 training hours dedicated to the TAC team. For our requirement, they must train 8 hours a month, 96 hours a year per operator. Grants that we were successful in obtaining for the tactical team last year include a grant for the Bearcat, which is the armored tactical team vehicle, transport vehicle. We received a grant from the Oil and Gas Revenue Fund for over $100,000 for this. We also received donations from Stark County, Dunn County, and Billings County, totaling $75,000 to obtain this purchase. Other grants was for the North Dakota Department of Emergency Services Maintenance and Sustainment Grant. We received over $31,000 in grant money for that, which include money for body armor, replacement tactical carriers, and for a tactical robot. Training hours, there were a total of 106 attendees sent to 64 different trainings during 2012 for the rest of our department. Courses included SWAT Basic, Marksman Observer Training, Police Leadership School, New Investigator Training, Incident Command Training, and Firearms Instructor Schools. Other successful grant applications that we were awarded through the North Dakota Department of Transportation. We received a total of $13,250 worth of grants. $4,000 of that went to overtime funds dedicated to occupant protection. Another $4,000 dedicated to the purchase of an in-car video system. $3,750 targeted for overtime targeting impaired driving, and $1,500 for a purchase of a radar unit. Other grants through the Oil and Gas Impact Grant and Public Safety Center, that in combination with the Fire Department and the Police Department, we were successful in obtaining a $1.5 million grant. Department of Justice VEST grant, over $8,000. A DAS North Dakota Radio grant, over $6,000. We received a donation from Marathon Oil for the purchase of a speed radar board, which you see on 3rd Avenue West near the mall. State Farm Insurance Speed Board grant, we also received $2,500. And the Eagles Gaming Fund donated $500 toward the purchase of a speed radar sign. Some of the activities that we were busy in 2012, the Daddy-Daughter Dance, we had over 630 participants, which is coming up here in April again. Citizens Academy, we restarted in 2012. There were a total of 25 participants. There were 9 2-hour classroom presentations and 8 hours of ride-along available to the students. We also started the Neighborhood Watch program, and the Badlands Crime Stopper program was restarted in 2012. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Any comments or questions? All right, very thorough report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to community development. Mr. Curtan, I think you have a couple of items there.
Mr. President, the first item is a commercial project to renovate roughly a 2,700 square foot second story of an existing commercial building. This is for the Renaissance Zone. It's for American Bank Center. It's located at 28 First Street West. The second floor will be utilized for office space by American Bank Center. Last month, the Planning and Zoning Commission and city staff recommended a 100% reduction in property taxes for a period of 5 years. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Curtan. There is a resolution in our binders regarding this item. I believe it would be Resolution 15. Would there be a motion to either approve or disapprove Resolution 15-2013?
I'll move that we approve American Bank Center request, Resolution 2013-15.
I'll second it.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next item I have is the building report for February of this year. As noted in January, we were significantly below last year. I attribute that mainly to the weather. This year is still a little bit less than what our typical weather is, but it's it's on course compared to last year. Single-family permits as of February, we had 8 compared to 58 of last year. Multifamily were essentially the same as last year. We had 5 compared to 6. I think a key total on that one is we've been able to significantly increase our multifamily units, 168 compared to 190 of last year. We have several permits that are wait to be issued, so I think our March total will be very indicative of our development activity that's resurging as the weather gets warmer. Key figure is the building permit values. Even though we're well below last year, the values are $23.7 million compared to $22.3 last year. So even though we're having less permits, the assessed values are significantly higher than they were last year. And also our alterations and additions are at $5 million compared to $158,000 from last year. So we're moving forward. These totals do not include Sanford Clinic or St. Joseph Hospital, which will be coming forth probably in the March totals. So we'll see a significant change and a surplus compared to this time last year after those two come through. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Cortana. Are there any comments or questions?
I have a question for Mr. Cortana. Are you catching up on your permits now?
Yes, it's always a difficult question to ask. I think that we've had staff that we've had vacations that are getting ready to, taking their vacations prior to the development season. I think we are catching up. We're pretty much caught up on the residential side. The commercial side is lagging. We've had, over the last month, it seems like a lot of our commercial permits were insufficient, or they were lacking, engineering, stormwater, or whatever. And many times people look at that. You'll have multiple players that are involved in a project, and one, the property owner or main contractor may not be aware that there's other issues that need to be involved, and then they may wonder why there's a delay with that. But for a building permit, just to let everybody know, it's not just the building department. It's also engineering, planning, and the fire department as well. And all those issues have to be resolved before we move forward with it. But we're moving forward, and we're ready for the development season.
So on the lots that are ready to be purchased, what is the is it 30 days out once they submit to you for a building permit?
If you're talking
residential.
Oh, residential, we're less than 10 days, I would say.
Really?
In many ways, we can get them done pretty quick. It's always difficult to give you a definitive one, Commissioner Dukart, because we may get 20 or 30 or 40 in one day. The developer will come through and do 20 or 30, and that's not unheard of. And depending on our staff, that could push it back. But if you average it out, we're trying to stay about 10 days to a week to 10 days for residential, and for commercial, we're looking at 3 to 4 weeks. And I'm going to have discussions with the building official, and we're going to make sure that we're going to do our very, very best to stay with those timelines.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Are there any reports by city commissioners? Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the commission? If so, you may do so now. Step to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. There's no one from the public. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have the motion, the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. We're adjourned.